Question number 21. A web application experiences high compute costs due to serving a high amount of static web content. How should the web server architecture be designed to be the most cost-effective or cost-efficient? Option A. Create an auto-scaling group to scale out based on average CPU usage. Option B. Create an Amazon CloudFront distribution to pull static content from an Amazon S3 bucket. Option C. Leverage reserved instances to add additional capacity at a significantly lower price. Option D. Create a multi-region deployment using an Amazon Route 53 geolocation routing policy. Correct answer is option B. Create an Amazon CloudFront distribution to pull static content from an Amazon S3 bucket. Question number 22. A solutions architect plans to migrate NAT instances to NAT gateway. The architect has NAT instances with scripts to manage high availability. What is the most efficient method to achieve similar high availability with NAT gateway? Option A. Remove source or destination check on NAT instances. Option B. Launch a NAT gateway in each availability zone. Option C. Use a mix of NAT instances and NAT gateway. Option D. Add an ELB application load balancer in front of NAT gateway. Correct answer is option B. Launch a NAT gateway in each availability zone. Question number 23. A solutions architect is designing a solution to store a large quantity of event data in Amazon S3. The architect anticipates that the workload will consistently exceed 100 requests each second. What should the architect do in Amazon S3 to optimize performance? Option A. Randomize a key name prefix. Option B. Store the event data in separate buckets. Option C. Randomize the key name suffix. Option D. Use Amazon S3 transfer acceleration. Correct answer is option A. Randomize a key name prefix. Question number 24. A new organization plans to migrate their 20 TB video archive to AWS. The files are rarely accessed, but when a request is made in advance and a 3 to 5 hours retrieval time frame is acceptable. However, when there is a breaking news story, the editors requires access to archived footage within minutes. Which storage solution meets the need of this organization while providing the lowest cost of storage? Option A. Store the archive in Amazon S3 reduced redundancy storage. Option B. Store the archive in Amazon Glacier and use standard retrieval for all content. Option C. Store the archive in Amazon Glacier and pay the additional charge for expedited retrieval when needed. Option D. Store the archive in Amazon S3 with a lifecycle policy. Move this to S3 infrequent access after 30 days. Correct answer is option C. Store the archive in Amazon Glacier and pay the additional charge for expedited retrieval when needed. Question number 25. A solutions architect is building a multi-tier website. The web servers will be in a public subnet, and the database servers will be in private subnet. Only the web servers can be accessed from the internet. The database servers must have internet access for software updates. Which solution meets the requirements? Option A. Assign elastic IP addresses to the database instances. Option B. Allow internet traffic on the private subnet through the network ACL. Option C. Use a NAT gateway. Option D. Use an egress-only internet gateway. Correct answer is option C. Use a NAT gateway. Question number 26. A solutions architect is designing a Lambda function that calls an API to list all running Amazon RDS instances. How should the request be authorized? Option A. Create an IAM access and secret key and store it in the Lambda function. Option B. Create an IAM role to the Lambda function with permissions to the list all Amazon RDS instances. Option C. Create an IAM role to Amazon RDS with permissions to list all Amazon RDS instances. Option D. Create an IAM access to secret key and store it in an encrypted RDS database. Correct answer is option B. Create an IAM role to the Lambda function with permissions to list all Amazon RDS instances. Question number 27. A solutions architect is building an application on AWS that will require 20,000 IOPS on a particular volume to support a media event. Once the event ends, the IOPS need is no longer required. The marketing team asks the architect to build the platform to optimize storage without incurring downtime. How should the architect design the platform to meet these requirements? Option A. Change the Amazon EC2 instance types. Option B. Change the EBS volume type to provisioned IOPS. Option C. Stop the Amazon EC2 instance and provision IOPS for the EBS volume. Option D. Enable an API gateway to change the endpoints for the Amazon EC2 instances. Correct answer is option B. Change the EBS volume type to provisioned IOPS. Question number 28. A solutions architect is building a new feature using a Lambda to create metadata when a user uploads a picture to Amazon S3. All metadata must be indexed. Which AWS service should the architect use to store this metadata? Option A. Amazon S3. Option B. Amazon DynamoDB. Option C. Amazon Kinesis. And option D. Amazon EFC. Correct answer is option B. Amazon DynamoDB. Question number 29. An interactive dynamic website runs an Amazon EC2 instances in a single subnet behind an ELB classic load balancer. Which design changes will make the site more highly available? Option A. Move some Amazon EC2 instances to a subnet in a different way. Option B. Move the website to Amazon S3. Option C. Change the ELB to an application load balancer. Option D. Move some Amazon EC2 instances to a subnet in the same availability zone. Correct answer is option A. Move some Amazon EC2 instances to a subnet in a different way. Question number 30. A solutions architect is designing a web application that is running on an Amazon EC2 instance. The application stores data in DynamoDB. The architect needs to secure access to the DynamoDB table. Which combination of steps does AWS recommend to achieve secure authorization? Select any two. Option A. Store an access key on the Amazon EC2 instance with rights to the DynamoDB table. Option B. Attach an IAM user to the Amazon EC2 instance. Option C. Create an IAM role with permissions to write to the DynamoDB table. Option D. Attach an IAM role to the Amazon EC2 instance. Option E. Attach an IAM policy to Amazon EC2 instance. Correct answer is option C and option D. Create an IAM role with permissions to write to the DynamoDB table and attach an IAM role to the Amazon EC2 instance. Question number 31. A solutions architect is about to deploy an API on multiple EC2 instances in an auto-scaling group behind an ELB. The support team has the following operational requirements. 1. They get an alert when the requests per second go over 50,000. 2. They get an alert when latency goes over 5 seconds. 3. They can validate how many times a day users call the API requesting highly sensitive data. Which combination of steps does the architect need to take to satisfy these operational requirements? Select any two. Option A. Ensure that CloudTel is enabled. Option B. Create a custom CloudWatch metric to monitor the API for data access. Option C. Configure CloudWatch alarms for any metrics the support team requires. Option D. Ensure that detailed monitoring for the EC2 instances is enabled. Option E. Create an application to export and save CloudWatch metrics for longer-term trending analysis. Correct answer is option B and option D, and these are: create a custom CloudWatch metric to monitor the API for data access, and ensure that detailed monitoring for the EC2 instances is enabled. Question number 32. A media company asked a solutions architect to design a highly available storage solution to serve a centralized document store for their Amazon EC2 instances. The storage solution needs to be PO6 compliant, scale dynamically, and be able to serve up to 100 concurrent EC2 instances. Which solution meets these requirements? Option A. Create an Amazon S3 bucket and store all the documents in the bucket. Option B. Create an Amazon EBS volume and allow multiple users to mount that volume to their EC2 instances. Option C. Use Amazon Glacier to store all the documents. Option D. Create an Amazon Elastic File Systems Amazon EFS to store and share the documents. Correct answer is option D. Create an Amazon Elastic File System Amazon EFS to store and share the documents. Question number 33. A solution architect has a two-tier application with a single Amazon EC2 instance, web server, and Amazon RDS MySQL multi-AZ DB instances. The architect is re-architecting the application for high availability by adding instances in a second availability zone. Which additional services will improve the availability of the application? Choose any two. Option A. Auto Scaling Group. Option B. AWS CloudTel. Option C. ELB Classic Load Balancer. Option D. Amazon DynamoDB. And option E. Amazon Elastic Cache. Correct answer is option A and option C. Auto Scaling Group and ELB Elastic Load Balancer. Question number 34. A company is migrating its data center to AWS. A part of this migration, there is a three-tier web application that has strict data at rest encryption requirements. The customer deploys this application on Amazon EC2 using Amazon EBS and now must provide encryption at rest. How can this requirement be met without changing the application? Option A. Use AWS Key Management Service and move the encrypted data to Amazon S3. Option B. Use an application-specific encryption API with AWS server-side encryption. Option C. Use encrypted EBS storage volumes with AWS managed keys. Option D. Use third-party tools to encrypt the EBS data volumes with key management service. Bring your own keys. Correct answer is option C. Use encrypted EBS storage volumes with AWS managed keys. Question number 35. A solutions architect is developing software on AWS that requires access to multiple AWS services, including an Amazon EC2 instance. This is a security-sensitive application, and AWS credentials such as access key ID and secret access key need to be protected and cannot be exposed anywhere in the system. What security measure would satisfy these requirements? Option A. Store the AWS access key ID secret access key combination in software comments. Option B. Assign an IAM user to the Amazon EC2 instance. Option C. Assign an IAM role to the Amazon EC2 instance. Option D. Enable multi-factor authentication for the AWS root account. Correct answer is option C. Assign an IAM role to the Amazon EC2 instance. Question number 36. An AWS workload in a VPC is running a legacy database on an Amazon EC2 instance. Data is stored on a 200 GB Amazon EBS GP2 volume. At peak load times, logs show excessive wait time. What solutions should be implemented to improve database performance using persistent storage? Option A. Migrate the data on the Amazon EBS volume to an SSD-backed volume. Option B. Change the EC2 instance type to one with EC2 instance stored volumes. Option C. Migrate the data on the EBS volume to provisioned IOPS SSD IO1. Option D. Change the EC2 instance type to one with burstable performance. Correct answer is option C. Migrate the data on the EBS volume to provisioned IOPS SSD IO1. Question number 37. A company's website receives 50,000 requests each second, and the company wants to use multiple applications to analyze the navigate patterns of the users on their website so that the experience can be personalized. What can a solution architect use to collect page clicks for the website and process them sequentially for each user? Option A. Amazon Kinesis Stream. Option B. Amazon SQS Standard Queue. Option C. Amazon SQS FIFO Option D. AWS CloudTrail Trail. Correct answer is option A. Amazon Kinesis Stream. Question number 38. A company wants to migrate a highly transactional database to AWS. Requirements state that the database has more than 6 TB of data and will grow exponentially. Which solution should a solution architect recommend? Option A. Amazon Aurora. Option B. Amazon Redshift. Option C. Amazon DynamoDB. Option D. Amazon RDS MySQL. Correct answer is option A. Amazon Aurora. Question number 39. A company hosts a two-tier application that consists of a publicly accessible web server that communicates with a private database. Only HTTPS port 443 traffic to the web server must be allowed from the internet. Which of the following options will achieve these requirements? Choose any two. Option A. Security group rule that allows inbound internet traffic for port 443. Option B. Security group rule that denies all inbound internet traffic except port 443. Option C. Network ACL rule that allows port 443 inbound and all ports outbound for internet traffic. Option D. Security group rule that allows internet traffic for port 443 in both inbound and outbound. Option E. Network ACL rule that allows port 443 for both inbound and outbound for all internet traffic. Correct answer is option A and option E, and these are security group rule that allows inbound internet traffic for port 443 and network ACL rule that allows port 443 for both inbound and outbound for all internet traffic. Question number 40. A solutions architect is designing an Amazon VPC. Applications in the VPC must have private connectivity to Amazon DynamoDB in the same AWS region. The design should route DynamoDB traffic through option A. VPC peering connection, option B. NAT gateway, option C. VPC endpoint, option D. AWS direct connect. Correct answer is option C. VPC endpoint. Question number 35. A solutions architect is developing software on AWS that requires access to multiple AWS services, including an Amazon EC2 instance. This is a security-sensitive application, and AWS credentials such as access key ID and secret access key need to be protected and cannot be exposed anywhere in the system. What security measure would satisfy these requirements? Option A. Store the AWS access key ID secret access key combination in software comments. Option B. Assign an IAM user to the Amazon EC2 instance. Option C. Assign an IAM role to the Amazon EC2 instance. Option D. Enable multi-factor authentication for the AWS root account. Correct answer is option C. Assign an IAM role to the Amazon EC2 instance. Question number 36. An AWS workload in a VPC is running a legacy database on an Amazon EC2 instance. Data is stored on a 200 GB Amazon EBS GP2 volume. At peak load times, logs show excessive wait time. What solution should be implemented to improve database performance using persistent storage? Option A. Migrate the data on the Amazon EBS volume to an SSD-backed volume. Option B. Change the EC2 instance type to one with EC2 instance stored volumes. Option C. Migrate the data on the EBS volume to provisioned IOPS SSD IO1. Option D. Change the EC2 instance type to one with burstable performance. Correct answer is option C. Migrate the data on the EBS volume to provisioned IOPS SSD IO1. Question number 37. A company's website receives 50,000 requests each second, and the company wants to use multiple applications to analyze the navigate patterns of the users on their website so that the experience can be personalized. What can a solution architect use to collect page clicks for the website and process them sequentially for each user? Option A. Amazon Kinesis Stream. Option B. Amazon SQS Standard Queue. Option C. Amazon SQS FIFO Option D. AWS CloudTrail Trail. Correct answer is option A. Amazon Kinesis Stream. Question number 38. A company wants to migrate a highly transactional database to AWS. Requirements state that the database has more than 6 TB of data and will grow exponentially. Which solution should a solution architect recommend? Option A. Amazon Aurora. Option B. Amazon Redshift. Option C. Amazon DynamoDB. Option D. Amazon RDS MySQL. Correct answer is option A. Amazon Aurora. Question number 39. A company hosts a two-tier application that consists of a publicly accessible web server that communicates with a private database. Only HTTPS port 443 traffic to the web server must be allowed from the internet. Which of the following options will achieve these requirements? Choose any two. Option A. Security group rule that allows inbound internet traffic for port 443. Option B. Security group rule that denies all inbound internet traffic except port 443. Option C. Network ACL rule that allows port 443 inbound and all ports outbound for internet traffic. Option D. Security group rule that allows internet traffic for port 443 in both inbound and outbound. Option E. Network ACL rule that allows port 443 for both inbound and outbound for all internet traffic. Correct answer is option A and option E, and these are security group rule that allows inbound internet traffic for port 443 and network ACL rule that allows port 443 for both inbound and outbound for all internet traffic. Question number 40. A solutions architect is designing an Amazon VPC. Applications in the VPC must have private connectivity to Amazon DynamoDB in the same AWS region. The design should route DynamoDB traffic through option A. VPC peering connection, option B. NAT gateway, option C. VPC endpoint, option D. AWS direct connect. Correct answer is option C. VPC endpoint. Question number 41. A solutions architect is architecting a workload that requires a performant object-based storage system that must be shared with multiple Amazon EC2 instances. Which AWS service meets this requirement? Option A. Amazon EFS. Option B. Amazon S3. Option C, Amazon EBS, and option D, Amazon Elastic Cache. Correct answer is option B, Amazon S3. Question number 42. A solutions architect is developing a solution for sharing file in organization. The solution must allow multiple users to access the storage service at once from different virtual machines and scale automatically. It must also support file level locking. Which storage service meets the requirements of this use case? Option A, Amazon S3. Option B, Amazon EFS. Option C, Amazon EBS. Option D, cached volumes. Correct answer is option B, Amazon EFS. Question number 43. A company runs a legacy application with a single tier architecture on an Amazon EC2 instance. Disk I/O is low, with occasional small spikes during business hours. The company requires the instance to be stopped from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. daily. Which storage option is most appropriate for this workload? Option A, Amazon EC2 Instance Storage. Option B, Amazon EBS General Purpose SSD GP2 Storage. Option C, Amazon S3. Option D, Amazon EBS Provision IOPS SSD IO1 Storage. Correct answer is option B, Amazon EBS General Purpose SSD GP2 Storage. Question number 44. As part of securing an API layer built on Amazon API Gateway, a solutions architect has to authorize users who are currently authenticated by an existing identity provider. The users must be denied access for a period of 1 hour after 3 unsuccessful attempts. How can the solutions architect meet these requirements? Option A. Use AWS IAM authorization and add at least privileged permissions to each respective IAM role. Option B. Use an API Gateway Custom Authorizer to invoke an AWS Lambda function to validate each user's identity. Option C. Use Amazon Cognito User Pools to provide built-in user management. Option D. Use Amazon Cognito User Pools to integrate the external identity providers. Correct answer is option B. Use an API Gateway Custom Authorizer to invoke an AWS Lambda function to validate each user's identity. Question number 45. An organization runs an online media site hosted on premises. An employee posted a product review that contained videos and pictures. The review went viral and the organization needs to handle the resulting spike in website traffic. What action would provide an immediate solution? Option A. Redesign the website to use Amazon API Gateway and use AWS Lambda to deliver content. Option B. Add server instances using Amazon EC2 and use Amazon Route 53 with a failover routing policy. Option C. Serve the images and videos via an Amazon CloudFront distribution created using the news site as the origin. Option D. Use Amazon Elastic Cache for Redis for catching and reducing the loads request from the origin. Correct answer is option C. Serve the images and videos via an Amazon CloudFront distribution created using the news site as the origin. Question number 46. A client notices that their engineers often make mistakes when creating Amazon SQS for their backend system. Which action should a solutions architect recommend to improve the process? Option A. Use the AWS CLI to create queues using AWS IAM access keys. Option B. Write a script to create the Amazon SQS queue using AWS Lambda. Option C. Use AWS Elastic Beanstalk to automatically create the Amazon SQS queues. Option D. Use AWS CloudFormation templates to manage the Amazon SQS queue creation. Correct answer is option D. Use AWS CloudFormation templates to manage the Amazon SQS queue creation. Question number 47. A development team is building an application with front-end and back-end application tiers. Which tier consists of Amazon EC2 instances behind an ELB classic load balancer? The instances run in auto-scaling groups across multiple availability zones. The network team has allocated the 10.0.0.0/24 address space for this application. Only the front-end load balancer should be exposed to the internet. There is a concerns about the limited size of the address space and the ability of each tier to scale. What should the VPC subnet design be in each availability zone? Option A. One public subnet for the load balancer tier, one public subnet for the front-end tier, and one private subnet for the back-end tier. Option B. One shared public subnet for all tiers of the application. Option C. One public subnet for the load balancer tier and one shared private subnet for the application tiers. Option D. One shared private subnet for all tiers of the application. Correct answer is option C. One public subnet for the load balancer tier and one shared private subnet for the application tiers. Question number 54. A solutions architect is building an application that stores object data. Compliance requirements state that the data stored is immutable. Which service meets these requirements? Option A. Amazon S3. Option B. Amazon Glacier. Option C. Amazon EFS. Option D. AWS Storage Gateway. Correct answer is option B. Amazon Glacier. Question number 55. A solutions architect is defining a shared Amazon S3 bucket where corporate applications will save objects. How can the architect ensure that when an application uploads an object to the Amazon S3 bucket, the object is encrypted? Option A. Set a CORS configuration. Option B. Set a bucket policy to encrypt all Amazon S3 objects. Option C. Enable default encryption on the bucket. Option D. Set permission for users. Correct answer is option B. Set a bucket policy to encrypt all Amazon S3 objects. Question number 56. An application tier currently hosts two web services on the same set of instances, listening on different ports. Which AWS service should a solution architect use to route traffic to the service based on the incoming request path? Option A. AWS Application Load Balancer. Option B. Amazon Cloud Front. Option C. Amazon Classic Load Balancer. Option D. Amazon Route 53. Correct answer is option A. AWS Application Load Balancer. Question number 57. A data analytics startup company asks a solution architect to recommend an AWS data store options for indexed data. The data processing engine will generate and input more than 64 TB of processed data every day. With item size reaching up to 300 KB, the startup is flexible with data storage and is more interested in a database that requires minimal effort to scale with a growing dataset size. Which AWS data store service should the architect recommend? Option A. Amazon RDS. Option B. Amazon Redshift. Option C. Amazon DynamoDB. Option D. Amazon S3. Correct answer is option C. Amazon DynamoDB. Question number 58. A solutions architect needs to allow developers to have SSH connectivity to web servers. The requirements are as follows. Limit access to users' origination from the corporate network. Web servers cannot have SSH access directly from the internet. Web servers reside in a private subnet. Which combination of steps must the architect complete to meet these requirements? Choose any two. Option A. Create a Bastion host that authenticates user against the corporate directory. Option B. Create a Bastion host with security group rules that only allow traffic from a corporate network. Option C. Attach an IAM role to the Bastion host with relevant permissions. Option D. Configure the web server's security group to allow SSH traffic from a Bastion host. Option E. Deny all SSH traffic from the corporate network in an inbound network ACL. Correct answer is option B and option D, and these are: create a Bastion host with security group rules that only allow traffic from the corporate network, and configure the web server's security group to allow SSH traffic from a Bastion host. Question number 59. A solutions architect needs to use AWS to implement Pilot Light disaster recovery for a 3-tier web application hosted in an premises data center. Which solution allows rapid provision of working fully scaled production environment? Option A. Continuously replicate the production database server to Amazon RDS. Use AWS CloudFormation to deploy the application and any additional servers if necessary. Option B. Continuously replicate the production database server to Amazon RDS. Create one application load balancer and register on premises servers. Configure ELB application load balancer to automatically deploy Amazon EC2 instances for application and additional servers if the on-premises application is down. Option C. Use a scheduled Lambda function to replicate the production database to AWS. Use Amazon Route 53 health checks to deploy the application automatically to Amazon S3 if production is unhealthy. Option D. Use a scheduled Lambda function to replicate the production database to AWS. Register on-premises servers to an auto-scaling group and deploy the application and additional servers if production is unavailable. Correct answer is option B. Continuously replicate the production database server to Amazon RDS. Create one application load balancer and register on premises servers. Configure ELB application load balancer to automatically deploy Amazon EC2 instance for application and additional servers if the on-premises application is down. Question number 60. A solutions architect notices slower response time from an application. The CloudWatch metrics on the MySQL RDS indicate read IOPS are high and fluctuate significantly when the database is under load. How should the database environment be redesigned to resolve the IOPS fluctuation? Option A. Change the RDS instance type to get more RAM. Option B. Change the storage type to provisioned IOPS. Option C. Scale the web server tier horizontally. Option D. Split the DB layer into separate RDS instances. Correct answer is option B. Change the storage type to provisioned IOPS. Question number 61. A solutions architect is designing a solution that can monitor memory and disk space utilization of all Amazon EC2 instances running Amazon Linux and Windows. Which solution meets the requirement? Option A. Default Amazon CloudWatch metrics. Option B. Custom Amazon CloudWatch metrics. Option C. Amazon Inspector Resource Monitoring. Option D. Default monitoring of Amazon EC2 instances. Correct answer is option B. Custom Amazon CloudWatch metrics. Question number 62. A solutions architect is creating a new relational database. The compliance team will use the database and mandate that data content must be stored across 3 different availability zones. Which of the following options should the architect use? Option A. Amazon Aurora. Option B. Amazon RDS MySQL and multi-AZ enabled. Option C. Amazon DynamoDB. Option D. Amazon Elasticase. Correct answer is option A. Amazon Aurora. Question number 63. A company needs to quickly ensure that all files created in an Amazon S3 bucket in US East 1 are also available in another bucket in AP Southeast 2. Which option represents the simplest way to implement this design? Option A. Add an S3 lifecycle rule to move any files from the bucket in US East 1 to the bucket in AP South East 2. Option B. Create a Lambda function to be triggered for every new file in US East 1 that copies the file to the bucket in AP Southeast 2. Option C. Use SNS to notify the bucket in AP Southeast 2 to create a file whenever the file is created in the bucket in US East 1. Option D. Enable versioning and configure cross-region replication from the bucket in US East 1 to the bucket in AP Southeast 2. Correct answer is option D. Enable versioning and configure cross-region replication from the bucket in US East 1 to the bucket in AP Southeast 2. Question number 64. An organization has a long-running image processing application that runs on spot instances will be terminated when interrupted. A highly available workload must be designed to respond to spot instance interruption notices. The solution must include a 2-minute warning when there is not enough capacity. How can these requirements be met? Option A. Use Amazon CloudWatch events to invoke an AWS Lambda function that can launch on-demand instances. Option B. Regular store data from the application on Amazon DynamoDB. Increase the maximum number of instances in the AWS auto-scaling group. Option C. Manually place a bid for additional spot instances at a higher price in the same AWS region and availability zone. Option D. Ensure that Amazon machine image associated with the application has the latest configuration for the launch configuration. Correct answer is option A. Use Amazon CloudWatch event to invoke an AWS Lambda function that can launch on-demand instances. Question number 65. A company has an Amazon RDS managed online transaction processing system that has very heavy read and write. The solutions architect notices throughput issues with the system. How can the responsiveness of the primary database be improved? Option A. Use asynchronous replication for standby to maximize throughput during peak demand. Option B. Offload select queries that can tolerate stale data to read replica. Option C. Offload select and update queries to read replica. Option D. Offload select query that needs the most current data to read replica. Correct answer is option B. Offload select queries that can tolerate stale data to read replica. Question number 66. A company is designing a failover strategy in Amazon Route 53 for its resources between two AWS regions. The company must have the ability to route a user's traffic to the region with least latency, and if both regions are healthy, Route 53 should route traffic to resources in both regions. Which strategy should the solutions architect recommend? Option A. Configure active failover using Route 53 latency DNS records. Option B. Configure active passive failover using Route 53 latency DNS records. Option C. Configure active failover using Route 53 failover DNS records. Option D. Configure active passive failover using Route 53 failover DNS records. Correct answer is option A. Configure active failover using Route 53 latency DNS records. Question number 67. A company is developing several critical long-running applications hosted on Docker. How should a solutions architect design a solution to meet the scalability and orchestration requirements on AWS? Option A. Use Amazon ECS and service auto-scaling. Option B. Use spot instances for orchestration and for scaling containers on existing Amazon EC2 instances. Option C. Use AWS Ops Work to launch containers in new Amazon EC2 instances. Option D. Use auto-scaling groups to launch containers on existing Amazon EC2 instances. Correct option is option A. Use Amazon ECS and service auto-scaling. Question number 68. A solutions architect is developing a new web application on AWS. The architect expects the application to become very popular, so the application must scale to support the load. The architect wants to focus on software development and deploying new features without provisioning or managing instances. What solution is appropriate? Option A. Amazon API Gateway and AWS Lambda. Option B. Elastic load balancing with auto-scaling groups and Amazon EC2. Option C. Amazon API Gateway and Amazon EC2. Option D. Amazon CloudFront and AWS Lambda. Correct answer is option A. Amazon API Gateway and AWS Lambda. Question number 69. A solutions architect is deploying a new production MySQL database on AWS. It is critical that the database is highly available. What should the architect do to achieve this goal with Amazon RDS? Option A. Create a read replica of the primary database and deploy it in different AWS regions. Option B. Enable multi-AZ to create a standby database in different availability zone. Option C. Enable multi-AZ to create a standby database in a different AWS region. Option D. Create a read replica of the primary database and deploy it in a different availability zone. Correct answer is option B. Enable multi-AZ to create a standby database in a different availability zone. Question number 70. An organization designs a mobile application for their customers to upload photos to a site. The application needs a secure login with MFA. The organization wants to limit the initial build time and maintenance of the solution. Which solution should a solutions architect recommend to meet the requirements? Option A. Use Amazon Cognito Identity with SMS-based MFA. Option B. Edit AWS IAM policies to require MFA for all users. Option C. Federate IAM against corporate AD that requires MFA. Option D. Use Amazon API Gateway and requires SSE for photos. Correct answer is option A. Use Amazon Cognito Identity with SMS-based MFA. Question number 71. A solutions architect is designing a solution to monitor weather changes by the minute. The front-end application is hosted on Amazon EC2 instances. The backend must be scalable to a virtually unlimited size, and data retrieval must occur with minimal latency. Which AWS service should the architect use to store the data and achieve these requirements? Option A. Amazon S3. Option B. Amazon DynamoDB. Option C. Amazon RDS. Option D. Amazon EBS. Correct answer is option B. Amazon DynamoDB. Question number 72. A company hosts a website on premises. The website has a mix of static and dynamic content, but users experience latency with loading static files. Which AWS service can help reduce latency? Option A. Amazon CloudFront with an premises servers as the origin. Option B. ELB application load balancer. Option C. Amazon Route 53 latency based routing. Option D. Amazon EFS to store and server static files. Correct answer is option A. Amazon CloudFront with on-premises servers as the origin. Question number 73. A company wants to analyze all of its sales information aggregated over the last 12 months. The company expects there to be over 10 TB of data from multiple sources. What service should be used? Option A. Amazon DynamoDB. Option B. Amazon Aurora MySQL. Option C. Amazon RDS MySQL. Option D. Amazon Redshift. Correct answer is option D. Amazon Redshift. Question number 74. A media company has deployed a multi-tier architecture on AWS. Web servers are deployed in 2 availability zones using an auto-scaling group with a default auto-scaling termination policy. The web server's auto-scaling group currently has 15 instances running. Which instance will be terminated first during scale-in operation? Option A. Instance with the oldest launch configuration. Option B. The instance in the availability zone that has most instances. Option C. The instance closest to the next billing are the option D, the oldest instance in the group. Correct answer is option B, the instance in the availability zone that has most instances. Question number 75. A retail company has sensors placed in its physical retail stores. The sensor sends messages over HTTP when customers interact with in-store product displays. A solutions architect needs to implement a system for processing those sensor messages. The results must be available for the data analysis team. Which architecture should be used to meet these requirements? Option A. Implement an Amazon API gateway to server as the HTTP endpoint. Have the API gateway triggers an AWS Lambda function to process the messages and save the results to an Amazon DynamoDB table. Option B. Create an Amazon EC2 instance to server as the HTTP endpoint and to process the messages. Save the results to Amazon S3 for the data analysis team to download. Option C. Use Amazon Route 53 to direct incoming sensor messages to a Lambda function to process the message and save the results to Amazon DynamoDB table. Option D. Use AWS Direct Connect to connect sensors to DynamoDB so that data can be written directly to a DynamoDB table where it can be accessed by the data analysis team. Correct answer is option A. Implement an Amazon API gateway to server as the HTTP endpoint. Have the API gateway trigger an AWS Lambda function to process the messages and save the results to an Amazon DynamoDB table. Question number 76. A client is migrating a legacy web application to the AWS cloud. The current system uses an Oracle database as a relational database management system solution. Backups occur every night and the data is stored on premises. The solutions architect must automate the backups and identity a storage solution while keeping costs low. Which AWS service will meet these requirements? Option A. Amazon RDS. Option B. Amazon Redshift. Option C. Amazon DynamoDB Accelerator. Option D. Amazon Elastic Cache. Correct answer is option A. Amazon RDS.
Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering question and answers on AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question are: a company designed an application. The application uses an AWS Lambda function to receive information through Amazon API Gateway and to store the information in an Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL database. During the proof of concept stage, the company has to increase the Lambda quota significantly to handle the high volumes of data that the company needs to load into the database. A solutions architect must recommend a new design to improve scalability and minimize the configuration effort. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A. Refactor the Lambda function code to Apache Tomcat code that run an Amazon EC2 instances. Connect the database by using native Java database connectivity drivers. Option B. Change the platform from Aurora to Amazon Dynamo provision a DynamoDB accelerator cluster. Use the DEX client SDK to point the existing DynamoDB API calls at the DAX cluster. Option C. Set up two Lambda functions. Configure one function to receive the information. Configure the other function to load the information into the database. Integrate the Lambda functions by using Amazon Simple Notification Service. And option D. Set up two Lambda functions. Configure one function to receive the information. Configure the other function to load the information into the database. Increase the Lambda functions by using an Amazon Simple Queue Service Queue. The correct answer is option D. Next question is: A company needs to review its AWS cloud deployment to ensure that its Amazon S3 buckets do not have unauthorized configuration changes. What should a solutions architect do to accomplish this goal? Option A, turn on AWS config with the appropriate rules. Option B, turn on AWS Trusted Advisor with the appropriate checks. Option C, turn on Amazon Inspector with the appropriate assessment template. And option D, turn on Amazon S3 server access logging, configure Amazon Event Bridge. The correct answer is option A. Moving to next question. A company is launching a new application and will display application metrics on an Amazon CloudWatch dashboard. The company's product manager needs to access this dashboard periodically. The product manager does not have an AWS account. A solutions architect must provide access to the product manager by following the principle of least privilege. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A, share the dashboard from the CloudWatch console, enter the product manager's email address, and complete the sharing steps. Provide a shareable link for the dashboard to the product manager. Option B, create an IAM user specifically for the product manager. Attach the CloudWatch read-only access AWS managed policy to the user. Share the new login credentials with the product manager. Share the browser URL of the correct dashboard with the product manager. Option C, create an IAM user for the company's employees. Attach the view-only access AWS managed policy to the IAM user. Share the new login credentials with the product manager. Ask the product manager to navigate to the CloudWatch console and locate the dashboard by name in the dashboard section. And option D, deploy a Bastion server in a public subnet when the product manager requires access to the dashboard. Start the server and share the RDP credentials. On the Bastion server, ensure that the browser is configured to open the dashboard URL with cached AWS credentials that have appropriate permissions to view the dashboard. The correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company is migrating applications to AWS. The applications are deployed in different accounts. The company manages the accounts centrally by using AWS organizations. The company's security team needs a single sign-on solution across all the company's accounts. The company must continue managing the users and groups in its on-premises self-managed Microsoft Active Directory. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A, enable AWS single sign-on from the AWS SSO console. Create a one-way forest trust or a one-way domain trust to connect the company's self-managed Microsoft Active Directory with AWS SSO by using AWS Directory Service for Microsoft Active Directory. Option B, enable AWS single sign-on from the AWS SSO console. Create a two-way forest trust to connect the company's self-managed Microsoft Active Directory with AWS SSO by using AWS Directory Service for Microsoft Active Directory. Option C, use AWS Directory Service. Create a two-way trust relationship with the company's self-managed Microsoft Active Directory. And option D, deploy an identity provider on premises. Enable AWS single sign-on from the AWS SSO console. The correct answer is option A. Next question is, A company provides a voice over Internet Protocol service that uses UDP connections. The service consists of Amazon EC2 instances that run in an auto-scaling group. The company has deployments across multiple AWS regions. The company needs to route users to the region with the lowest latency. The company also needs automated failover between regions. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A. Deploy a network load balancer and an associated target group. Associate the target group with the auto-scaling group. Use the NLB as an AWS global accelerator endpoint in each region. Option B. Deploy an application load balancer and an associated target group. Associate the target group with the auto-scaling group. Use the ALB as an AWS global accelerator endpoint in each region. Option C. Deploy a network load balancer and an associated target group. Associate the target group with sorry, associate the target group with the auto-scaling group. Create an Amazon Root 5 tree latency record that points to aliases for each NLB. Create an Amazon CloudFront distribution that uses the latency record as an origin. And option D, deploy an application load balancer and an associated target group. Associate the target group with the auto-scaling group. Create an Amazon Root 5 tree weighted record that points to aliases for each ALB. Deploy an Amazon CloudFront distribution that uses the weighted record as an origin. The correct answer is option A. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a development team runs monthly resource-intensive tests on its general purpose Amazon RDS for MySQL DB instance with performance insights enabled. The testing lasts for 48 hours once a month and is the only process that uses the database. The team wants to reduce the cost of running the test without reducing the compute and memory attributes of the DB instance. Which solutions meet these requirements most cost effectively? Option A. Stop the DB instance when tests are completed. Restart the DB instance when required. Option B. Use an auto-scaling policy with the DB instance to automatically scale when tests are completed. Option C. Create a snapshot when tests are completed. Terminate the DB instance and restore the snapshot when required. And option D. Modify the DB instance to a low-capacity instance when tests are completed. Modify the DB instance again when required. The correct answer is option C. Next question is: a company that hosts its web application on AWS wants to ensure all Amazon EC2 instances, Amazon RDS DB instances, and Amazon Redshift cluster are configured with text. The company wants to minimize the effort of configuring and operating this check. What should a solutions architect do to accomplish this? Option A. Use AWS config rules to define and detect resources that are not properly tagged. Option B. Use Cost Explorer to display resources that are not properly tagged. Tag those resources manually. Option C. Write API calls to check all resources for proper tag allocation. Periodically run the code on an EC2 instance. And option D. Write API calls to check all resources for proper task allocation. Schedule an AWS Lambda function through Amazon CloudWatch to periodically run the code. The correct answer is option A. Next question is, a development team needs to host a website that will access by other teams. The website content consists of HTML, CSS, client-side JavaScript, and emails. Which method is the most cost-effective for hosting the website? Option A. Containerize the website and host it is AWS Fargate. Option B. Create an Amazon S3 bucket and host the website there. Option C. Deploy a web server on an Amazon EC2 instance to host the website. And option D. Configure an application load balancer with an AWS Lambda target that uses the Express framework. The correct answer is option B. Moving to next question. A company runs an online marketplace web application on AWS. The application serves hundreds of thousands of users during peak hours. The company needs a scalable, near real-time solutions to share the details of millions of financial transactions with several other internal applications. Transactions also need to be processed to remove sensitive data before being stored in a document database for low latency retrieval. What should a solutions architect recommend to meet these requirements? Option A. Store the transactions data into Amazon DynamoDB. Set up a rule in DynamoDB to remove sensitive data from every transaction upon write. Use DynamoDB streams to share the transactions data with other applications. Option B. Stream the transactions data into Amazon Kinesis Data Firehouse to store data in Amazon DynamoDB and Amazon S3. Use AWS Lambda integration with Kinesis Data Firehouse to remove sensitive data. Other applications can consume the data stored in Amazon S3. Option C. Stream the transactions data into Amazon Kinesis data streams. Use AWS Lambda integration to remove sensitive data from every transaction and then store the transactions data in Amazon DynamoDB. Other applications can consume the transactions data of the Kinesis data stream. And option D. Store the best transactions data in Amazon S3 as files. Use AWS Lambda to process every file and remove sensitive data before updating the files in Amazon S3. The Lambda function then stores the data in Amazon DynamoDB. Other applications can consume transaction files stored in Amazon S3. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company hosts its multi-tier applications on AWS. For compliance, governance, auditing and security, the company must track configuration changes on its AWS resources and record a history of API calls made to these resources. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Use Cloud Trial to track configuration changes and AWS config to record API calls. Option B. Use AWS config to track configuration changes and AWS Cloud Trail to record API calls. Option C. Use AWS config to track configuration changes and Amazon CloudWatch to record API calls. And option D. Use AWS CloudTrail to track configuration changes and Amazon CloudWatch to record API calls. The correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company is preparing to launch a public-facing web application in the AWS cloud. The architecture consists of Amazon EC2 instances within a VPC behind an elastic load balancer. A third-party service is used for the DNS. The company's solutions architect must recommend a solution to detect and protect against large-scale DDoS attacks. Which solution meets these requirements? Option A. Enable Amazon Guard Duty on the account. Option B. Enable Amazon Inspector on the EC2 instances. Option C. Enable AWS Shield and assign Amazon Root 53 to it. And option D. Enable AWS Shield Advanced and assign the ELB to it. The correct answer is option D. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company runs a highly available image processing application on Amazon EC2 instances in a single VPC. The EC2 instances run inside several subnets across multiple availability zones. The EC2 instances do not communicate with each other. However, the EC2 instances download emails from Amazon S3 and upload emails to Amazon S3 through a single NAT gateway. The company is concerned about data transfer charges. What is the most cost-effective way for the company to avoid regional data transfer charges? Option A. Launch the NAT gateway in each availability zone. Option B. Replace the NAT gateway with a NAT instance. Option C. Deploy a gateway VPC endpoint for Amazon S3. And option D. Provision an EC2 dedicated host to run the EC2 instances. The correct answer is option C. Next question is: a company has an on-premises application that generates a large amount of time-sensitive data that is backed up to Amazon S3. The application has grown and there are user complaints about internet bandwidth limitations. A solutions architect needs to design a long-term solution that allows for both timely backups to Amazon S3 and with minimal impact on internet connectivity for internal users. Which solution meet these requirements? Option A. Establish AWS VPN connections and proxy all traffic through a VPC gateway endpoint. Option B. Establish a new AWS Direct Connect connections and direct backup traffic through this new connection. Option C. Order daily AWS Snowball devices. Load the data onto the Snowball devices and return the devices to AWS each day. And option D. Submit a support ticket through the AWS Management Console. Request the removal of S3 service limits from the account. The correct answer is option B. Next question is: a company has an Amazon S3 bucket that contains critical data. The company must protect the data from accidental deletion. Which combination of steps should a solutions architect take to meet these requirements? Choose 2. Option A. Enable versioning on the S3 bucket. Option B. Enable MFA delete on the S3 bucket. Option C. Create a bucket policy on the S3 bucket. Option D. Enable default encryption on the S3 bucket. And option E. Create a lifecycle policy for the objects in the S3 bucket. The correct answer is Option A and B. Next question is, a company has a data ingestion workflow that consists of the following: an Amazon Simple Notification Service topic for notifications about new data deliveries, an AWS Lambda function to process the data and record metadata. The company observes that the ingestion workflow fails occasionally because of network connectivity issues. When such a failure occurs, the Lambda function does not ingest the corresponding data unless the company manually reruns the job. Which combination of actions should a solutions architect take to ensure that the Lambda function ingests all data in the future? Choose 2. Deploy the Lambda function in multiple availability zones. Option B. Create an Amazon Simple Queue service queue and subscribe it to the SNS topic. Option C. Increase the CPU and memory that are allocated to the Lambda function. Option D. Increase provisions throughput for the Lambda function. And option E. Modify the Lambda function to read an Amazon Simple Queue service queue. The correct answer is option B and E. Next question is, a company has an application that provides marketing services to stores. The services are based on previous purchases by store customers. The stores upload transaction data to the company through SFTP, and the data is processed and analyzed to generate new marketing offers. Some of the files can exceed 200 GB in size. Recently, the company discovered that some of the stores have uploaded files that contain personally identifiable information that should not have been included. The company wants administrators to be alerted if P2 is shared again. The company also wants to automate remediation. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements with the least development effort? Option A. Use an Amazon S3 bucket as a secure transfer point. Use Amazon Inspector to scan the objects in the bucket. If objects contain PII, trigger an S3 lifecycle policy to remove the objects that contain PII. Option B. Use an Amazon S3 buckets as a secure transfer point. Use Amazon Messy to scan the objects in the bucket. If objects contain PII, use Amazon Simple Notification Service to trigger a notification to the administrators to remove the objects that contains PII. Option C. Implement custom scanning algorithms in an AWS Lambda function. Trigger the function when objects are loaded into the bucket. If object contains PII, use Amazon Simple Notification Service to trigger a notification to the administrators to remove the objects that contain PII. And option D. Implement custom scanning algorithms in an AWS Lambda function. Trigger the function when objects are loaded into the bucket. If objects contain PII, use Amazon Simple Email Service to trigger a notification to the administrators and trigger an S3 lifecycle policy to remove the meats that contain PII. The correct answer is option B. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a company is building an application in the AWS cloud. The application will store data in Amazon S3 buckets in two AWS regions. The company must use an AWS key management service, customer managed key, to encrypt all data that is stored in the S3 buckets. The data in both S3 buckets must be encrypted and decrypted with the same KMS key. The data and the key must be stored in each of the two regions. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Create an S3 bucket in each region. Configure the S3 buckets to use server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed encryption keys. Configure application between the S3 buckets. Option B. Create a customer managed multi-region KMS key. Create an S3 bucket in each region. Configure application. Configure application between the S3 buckets. Configure the application to use the KMS key with client-side encryption. Option C. Create a customer managed KMS key and an S3 bucket in each region. Configure the S3 buckets to use server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed encryption keys. Configure application between the S3 buckets. And option D. Create a customer managed KMS key and an S3 bucket in each region. Configure the S3 buckets to use server-side encryption with AWS KMS keys. Configure the application between the S3 buckets. The correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company recently launched a variety of new workloads on Amazon EC2 instances in its AWS account. The company needs to create a strategy to access and administer the instances remotely and securely. The company needs to implement a repeatable process that works with native AWS services and follows the AWS well-architected framework. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Use the EC2 serial console to directly access the terminal interface of each instance for administration. Option B. Attach the appropriate IAM role to each existing instance and new instance. Use AWS Systems Manager Session Manager to establish a remote SSH session. Option C. Create an administrative SSH key pair. Load the public key into each EC2 instances. Deploy a Bastion host in a public subnet to provide a tunnel for administration of each instance. And option D. Establish an AWS site-to-site VPN connection. Instruct administrators to use their local on-premises machines to connect directly to the instances by using SSH key across the VPN tunnel. The correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company hosting a static website on Amazon S3 and is using Amazon Route 53 for DNS. The website is experiencing increased demand from around the world. The company must decrease latency for users who access the website. Which solution meets these requirements most cost effectively? Option A. Replicate the S3 bucket that contains the website to all AWS regions. Add Route 53 geolocation routing entries. Option B. Provision accelerators in AWS Global Accelerator. Associate the supplied IP addresses with the S3 bucket. Edit the Route 53 entries to point to the IP addresses of the accelerators. Option C. Add an Amazon CloudFront distribution in front of the S3 bucket. Edit the Route 53 entries to point to the CloudFront distribution. And option D. Enable S3 transfer acceleration on the bucket. Edit the Route 53 entries to point to the new endpoint. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company maintains a searchable repository of items on its website. The data is stored in an Amazon RDS for MySQL database table that contains more than 10 million rows. The database has 2 TB of general purpose SSD storage. There are millions of updates against this data every day through the company's website. The company has noticed that some insert operations are taking 10 seconds or longer. The company has determined that the database storage performance is a problem. Which solution addresses this performance issue? Option A. Change the storage type to provisioned IOPS SSD. Option B. Change the DB instance to a memory optimized instance class. Option C. Change the DB instance to a burstable performance instance class. And option D. Enable multi-AZ RDS read replicas with MySQL native asynchronous replication. The correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company has thousands of edge devices that collectively generate 1 TB of status alerts each day. Each alert is approximately 2 KB in size. A solutions architect needs to implement a solution to ingest and store the alerts for future analysis. The company wants a highly available solution. However, the company needs to minimize costs and does not want to manage additional infrastructure. Additionally, the company wants to keep 14 days of data available for immediate analysis and archive any data older than 14 days. What is the most operationally efficient solution that meets these requirements? Please go through the options. The correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company's application integrates with multiple software as a service sources for data collection. The company runs Amazon EC2 instances to receive the data and to upload the data to an Amazon S3 bucket for analysis. The same EC2 instance that receives and uploads the data also sends a notification to the user when an upload is complete. The company has noticed show application performance and wants to improve the performance as much as possible. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Create an auto-scaling group so that EC2 instances can scale out. Configure an S3 event notification to send events to an Amazon Simple Notification Service topic when the upload to the S3 bucket is complete. Option B. Create an Amazon Airflow flow to transfer database between each SAS source and the S3 bucket. Configure an S3 event notification to send events to an Amazon Simple Notification Service topic when the upload to the S3 bucket is complete. Option C. Create an Amazon Event Bridge rule for each SAS resource to send output data. Configure the S3 bucket as the rules target. Create a second event bridge rules to send events when the upload to the S3 bucket is complete. Configure an Amazon Simple Notification Service topic as the second rules target. And option D. Create a Docker container to use instead of an EC2 instance. Host the containerized application on Amazon Elastic Container Service. Configure Amazon CloudWatch container inside to send events to an Amazon Simple Service topic when the upload to the S3 bucket is complete. The correct answer is option B. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, A company needs guaranteed Amazon EC2 capacity in three specific availability zones in a specific AWS region for an upcoming event that will last 1 week. What should the company do to guarantee the EC2 capacity? Option A. Purchase reserve instances that specify the region needed. Option B. Create an on-demand capacity reservation that specifies the region needed. Option C. Purchase reserved instances that specify the region and three availability zones needed. And option D. Create an on-demand capacity reservation that specifies the region and three availability zones needed. The correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company's website uses an Amazon EC2 instance store for its catalog of items. The company wants to make sure that the catalog is highly available and that the catalog is stored in a durable location. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Move the catalog to Amazon Elastic Cache for Redis. Option B. Deploy a larger EC2 instance with a larger instance store. Option C. Move the catalog from the instance store to Amazon S3 Glacier Dev Archive. And option D. Move the catalog to an Amazon Elastic File System. The correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company stores call transcript files on a monthly basis. Users access the files randomly within 1 year of the call, but users access the files infrequently after 1 year. The company wants to optimize its solution by giving users the ability to query and retrieve files that are less than 1 year old as quickly as possible. A delay in retrieving older files is acceptable. Which solution will meet these requirements most cost effectively? Option A. Store individual files with tags in Amazon S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval. Query the tags to retrieve the files from the S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval. Option B. Store individual files in Amazon S3 Intelligent Tiering. Use S3 lifecycle policies to move the files to S3 Glacier Flexible Retrieval after 1 year. Query and retrieve the files that are in Amazon S3 by using Amazon Athena. Query and retrieve the files that are in S3 Glacier by using S3 Glacier Select. Option C. Store individual files with tags in Amazon S3 Standard Storage. Store search metadata for each archive in Amazon S3 Standard Storage. Use S3 lifecycle policies to move the files to S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval after 1 year. Query and retrieve the files by searching for metadata from Amazon S3. And option D. Store individual files in Amazon S3 Standard Storage. Use S3 lifecycle policies to move the files to S3 Glacier Deep Archive after 1 year. Store search metadata in Amazon RDS. Query the files from Amazon RDS. Retrieve the files from S3 Glacier Deep Archive. The correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company has a production workload that runs on 1000 Amazon EC2 Linux instances. The workload is powered by third-party software. The company needs to patch the third-party software on all EC2 instances as quickly as possible to remediate a critical security vulnerability. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Create an AWS Lambda function to apply the patch to all EC2 instances. Option B. Configure AWS Systems Manager Patch Manager to apply the patch to all EC2 instances. Option C. schedule an AWS Systems Manager maintenance window to apply the patch to all EC2 instances. And option D, use AWS Systems Manager run command to run a custom command that applies the patch to all EC2 instances. The correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company is developing an application that provides order shipping statistics for retrieval by a REST API. The company wants to extract the shipping statistics, organize the data into an easy-to-read HTML format, and send the report to several email addresses at the same time every morning. Which combination of steps should a solutions architect take to meet these requirements? Choose 2. Option A, configure the application to send the data to Amazon Nessus Data Firehouse. Option B, use Amazon Simple Email Service to format the data and to send the report by email. Option C, create an Amazon Event Bridge scheduled event that invokes an AWS Glue job to query the application's API for the data. Option D, create an Amazon Event Bridge scheduled event that invokes an AWS Lambda function to query the application's API for the data. And option E, store the application data in Amazon S3, create an Amazon Simple Notification Service topic as an S3 event destination to send the report by email. The correct answer is option B and D. Next question is, a company wants to migrate its on-premises application to AWS. The application produces output files that vary in size from tens of gigabytes to hundreds of terabytes. The application data must be stored in a standard file system structure. The company wants a solution that scales automatically, is highly available, and requires minimum operational overhead. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A, migrate the application to run as containers on Amazon Elastic Container Service. Use Amazon S3 for storage. Option B, migrate the application to run as containers on Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Service. Use Amazon Elastic Book Store for storage. Option C, migrate the application to Amazon EC2 instances in a multi-AZ auto-scaling group. Use Amazon Elastic File System for storage. And option D, migrate the application to Amazon EC2 instances in a multi-AZ auto-scaling group. Use Amazon Elastic Book Store for storage. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company needs to store its accounting records in Amazon S3. The records must be immediately accessible for 1 year and then must be archived for an additional 9 years. No one at the company, including administrative users and root users, can be able to delete the records during the entire 10-year period. The records must be stored with maximum resiliency. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A, store the records in S3 Glacier for the entire 10-year period. Use an access control policy to deny deletion of the records for a period of 10 years. Option B, store the records by using S3 Intelligent Tiering. Use an IAM policy to deny deletion of the records. After 10 years, change the IAM policy to allow deletion. Option C, use an S3 lifecycle policy to transition the records from S3 standards to S3 Glacier Deep Archive after 1 year. Use S3 objects locked in compliance mode for a period of 10 years. And option D, use an S3 lifecycle policy to transition the records from S3 standard to S3 one zone infrequent access after 1 year. Use S3 object look in governance mode for a period of 10 years. The correct answer is option C. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company runs multiple Windows workloads on AWS. The company's employees use Windows file shares that are hosted on two Amazon EC2 instances. The file shares synchronize data between themselves and maintain duplicate copies. The company wants a highly available and durable storage solution that preserves how users currently access the files. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A: migrate all the data to Amazon S3, set up IAM authentication for users to access files. Option B: set up an Amazon S3 file gateway, mount the S3 file gateway on the existing EC2 instances. Option C: extend the file share environment to Amazon FSx for Windows File Server with a multi-AZ configuration. Migrate all the data to FSx for Windows File Server. And option D: extend the file share environment to Amazon Elastic File System with a multi-AZ configuration. Migrate all the data to Amazon EFS. The correct answer is option C. Next question is: a solutions architect is developing a VPC architecture that includes multiple subnets. The architecture will host applications that use Amazon EC2 instances and Amazon RDS DB instances. The architecture consists of 6 subnets in 2 availability zones. Each availability zone includes a public subnet, a private subnet, and a dedicated subnet for database. Only EC2 instances that run in the private subnets can have access to the RDS databases. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A: create a new route table that excludes the route to the public subnets. CIDR blocks associate the route table with the database subnets. Option B: create a security group that denies inbound traffic from the insecurity group that is assigned to instances in the public subnets. Attach the security group to the DB instances. Option C: create a security group that allows inbound traffic from the security group that is assigned to instances in the private subnets. Attach the security group to the DB instances. And option D: create a new peering connection between the public subnets and the private subnets. Create a different peering connection between the private subnets and the database subnets. The correct answer is option C. Next question is: a company has registered its domain name with Amazon Route 53. The company uses Amazon API Gateway in the SaaS Central 1 region as a public interface for its backend microservice APIs. Third-party services consume the API securely. The company wants to design its API gateway URL with the company's domain name and corresponding certificate so that the third-party services can use HTTPS. Which solution will meet these requirements? Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is: a company is running a popular social media website. The website gives users the ability to upload images to share with other users. The company wants to make sure that the images do not contain inappropriate content. The company needs a solution that minimizes development effort. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A: use Amazon Comprehend to detect inappropriate content. Use human review for low confidence predictions. Option B: use Amazon recognition to detect inappropriate content, use human review for low confidence predictions. Option C, use Amazon SageMaker to detect inappropriate content, use ground truth to label low confidence predictions. And option D, use AWS Fargate to deploy a custom machine learning model to detect inappropriate content, use ground truth to label low confidence predictions. The correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company wants to run its critical applications in containers to meet requirements for scalability and availability. The company prefers to focus on maintenance of the critical applications. The company does not want to be responsible for provisioning and managing the underlying infrastructure that runs the containerized workload. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A, use Amazon EC2 instances and install Docker in the instances. Option B, use Amazon Elastic Container Service on Amazon EC2 worker nodes. Option C, use Amazon Elastic Container Service on AWS Fargate. And option D, use Amazon EC2 instances from an Amazon Elastic Container Service. Optimize a mission machine image. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company hosts more than 300 global websites and applications. The company requires a platform to analyze more than 30 TB of clickstream data each day. What should a solutions architect do to transmit and process the clickstream data? Option A, design an AWS data pipeline to archive the data to an Amazon S3 bucket and run an Amazon EMR cluster with the data to generate analytics. Option B, create an auto-scaling group of Amazon EC2 instances to process the data and send it to an Amazon S3 data lake for Amazon Redshift to use for analysis. Option C, cache the data to Amazon CloudFront, store the data in an Amazon S3 bucket. When an object is added to the S3 bucket, run an AWS Lambda function to process the data for analysis. And option D, collect the data from Amazon Nessus data streams. Use Amazon Nessus Data Firehouse to transmit the data to an Amazon S3 data lake. Load the data in Amazon Redshift for analysis. The correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company has a website hosted on AWS. The website is behind an application load balancer that is configured to handle HTTP and HTTPS separately. The company wants to forward all requests to the website so that the request will use HTTPS. What should a solutions architect do not meet sorry what should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A, update the ALB's network ACL to accept only HTTPS traffic. Option B, create a rule that replaces the HTTP in the URL with HTTPS. Option C, create a listener rule on the ALB to redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS. And option D, replace the ALB with a network load balancer configured to use server name indication. Correct answer is option C. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a company is developing a two-tier web application on AWS. The company's developers have deployed the application on an Amazon EC2 instance that connects directly to a backend Amazon RDS database. The company must not hardcode database credentials in the application. The company must also implement a solution to automatically rotate the database credentials on a regular basis. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Store the database credentials in the instance metadata. Use Amazon Event Bridge rules to run a scheduled AWS Lambda function that updates the RDS credentials and instance metadata at the same time. Option B. Store the database credentials in a configuration file in an encrypted Amazon S3 bucket. Use Amazon Event Bridge rules to run a scheduled AWS Lambda function that updates the RDS credentials and the credentials in the configuration file at the same time. Use S3 versioning to ensure the ability to fall back to previous values. Option C. Store the database credentials as a secret in AWS Secrets Manager. Turn on automatic rotation for the secret. Attach the required permission to the EC2 role to grant access to the secret. And option D. Store the database credentials as encrypted parameters in AWS Systems Manager Parameter Store. Turn on automatic rotation for the encrypted parameters. Attach the required permissions to the ECT role to grant access to the encrypted parameters. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company is deploying a new application to AWS. The application will run behind an application load balancer. The application needs to be encrypted at the edge with an SSL/TLS certificate that is issued by an external certificate authority. The certificate must be rotated each year before the certificate expires. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Use AWS Certificate Manager to issue an SSL/TLS certificate. Apply the certificate to the ALB. Use the Manage Renewal feature to automatically rotate the certificate. Option B. Use AWS Certificate Manager to issue an SSL/TLC certificate. Import the key material from the certificate. Apply the certificate to the ALUs to manage the renewal feature to automatically rotate the certificate. Option C. Use AWS Certificate Manager Private Certificate Authority to issue an SSL/TLS certificate from the root CA. Apply the certificate to the ALB. Use the Manage Renewal feature to automatically rotate the certificate. And option D. Use AWS Certificate Manager to import an SSL/TLS certificate. Apply the certificate to the ALB. Use Amazon Event Bridge to send a notification when the certificate is nearing expiration. Rotate the certificate manually. The correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company runs its infrastructure on AWS and has a registered base of 7 lakh users for its document management application. The company intends to create a product that converts large PDF files to JPG image files. The PDF file averages 5 MB in size. The company needs to store the original files and the converted files. A solutions architect must design a scalable solution to accommodate demand that will grow rapidly over time. Which solution meet these requirements most cost effectively? To save the PDF files to Amazon S3, Configure an S3 put event to invoke an AWS Lambda function to convert the files to JPG format and store them back in Amazon S3. Save the PDF files to Amazon Dynamo. Use the DynamoDB streams feature to invoke an AWS Lambda function to convert the files to JPG format and store them back in DynamoDB. Option C. Upload the PDF files to an AWS Elastic Beanstalk application that includes Amazon EC2 instances, Amazon Elastic Bookstore storage, and an auto-scaling group. Use a program in the EC2 instances to convert the files to JPG format. Save the PDF files and the JPG files in the EBS store. And option D, upload the PDF files to an AWS Elastic Beanstalk application that includes Amazon EC2 instances, Amazon Elastic File System storage, and an auto-scaling group. Use a program in the EC2 instances to convert the file to JPG format. Save the PDF files and the JPG files in the EBS store. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company has more than 5 TB of file data on Windows file servers that run on premises. Users and applications interact with data each day. The company is moving its Windows workloads to AWS. As the company continues this process, the company requires access to AWS and on-premises file storage with minimum latency. The company needs a solution that minimizes operational overhead and requires no significant changes to the existing file access patterns. The company uses an AWS site-to-site VPN connection for connectivity to AWS. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Deploy and configure Amazon FSx for Windows File Server on AWS. Move the on-premises file data to FSx for Windows File Server. Reconfigure the workloads to use FSx for Windows File Server on AWS. Option B. Deploy and configure an Amazon S3 file gateway on premises. Move the on-premises file data to the S3 file gateway. Reconfigure the on-premises workloads and the cloud workloads to use the S3 file gateway. Option C. Deploy and configure an Amazon S3 file gateway on premises. Move the on-premises file data to Amazon S3. Reconfigure the workloads to use either Amazon S3 directly or the S3 file gateway, depending on each workload's location. And option D. Deploy and configure Amazon FSx for Windows File Server on AWS. Deploy and configure an Amazon FSx file gateway on premises. Move the on-premises file data to the FSx file gateway. Configure the cloud workloads to use FSx for Windows File Server on AWS. Configure the on-premises workloads to use the FSx file gateway. And the correct answer is option D. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a company runs its infrastructures on AWS. A hospital recently deployed a RESTful API with Amazon API Gateway and AWS Lambda. The hospital uses API Gateway and Lambda to upload reports that are in PDF format and JPEG format. The hospital needs to modify the Lambda code to identify protected health information in the reports. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead. Option A. Use existing Python libraries to extract the text from the reports and to identify the PHI from the extracted text. Option B. Use Amazon TextTrack to extract the text from the reports. Use Amazon SageMaker to identify the PHI from the extracted text. Option C. Use Amazon TextTrack to extract the text from the reports. Use Amazon Comprehend Medical to identify the PHI from the extracted text. And option D. Use Amazon Recognition to extract the text from the reports. Use Amazon Comprehend Medical to identify the PHI from the extracted text. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company has an application that generates a large number of files, each approximately 5 MB in size. The files are stored in Amazon S3. Company policy requires the files to be stored for 4 years before they can be deleted. Immediate accessibility is always required as the files contain critical business data that is not easy to reproduce. The files are frequent accessed in the first 30 days of the object creation but are rarely accessed after the first 30 days. Which storage solution is most cost effective? Option A. Create an S3 bucket lifecycle policy to move files from S3 standard to S3 Glacier 30 days from object creation. Delete the files 4 years after object creation. Option B. Create an S3 bucket lifecycle policy to move files from S3 standard to S3 one zone infrequent access. Create an S3 bucket lifecycle policy to move files from S3 standard to S3 one zone infrequent access 30 days from object creation. Delete these files 4 years after object creation. Option C. Create an S3 bucket lifecycle policy to move files from S3 standard to S3 standard in frequent access 30 days from object creation. Delete the files 4 years after object creation. Option D. Create an S3 bucket lifecycle policy to move files from S3 standard to S3 standard in frequent access 30 days from object creation. Move the files to S3 Glacier 4 years after object creation. The correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company hosts an application on multiple Amazon EC2 instances. The application processes messages from an Amazon SQS queue, writes to an Amazon RDS table, and deletes the message from the queue. Occasional duplicate records are found in the RDS table. The SQS queue does not contain any duplicate messages. What should a solutions architect do to ensure messages are being processed once only? Option A. Use the create queue API call to create a new queue. Option B. Use the add permission API call to add appropriate permissions. Option C. Use the receive message API call to set an appropriate wait time. And option D. Use a change message visibility API call to increase the visibility timeout. The correct answer is option D. Next question is, a solutions architect is designing a new hybrid architecture to extend a company's on-premises infrastructure to AWS. The company requires a highly available connection with consistent, low latency to an AWS region. The company needs to minimize costs and is willing to accept lower traffic if the primary connection fails. What should the solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Provision an AWS Direct Connect connection to a region. Provision a VPN connection as a backup if the primary direct connection contains fail. Option B. Provision a VPN tunnel connection to a region for private connectivity. provision a second VPN tunnel for private connectivity, and as a backup if the primary VPN connection fails. Option C. Provision an AWS direct connection to a region. Provision a second direct connection to the same region as a backup if the primary direct connection fails. And option D. Provision an AWS direct connection to a region. Use the direct connect failover attribute from the AWS CLI to automatically create a backup connection if the primary direct connection fails. And the correct answer is option A. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company is running a business critical web application on Amazon EC2 instances behind an application load balancer. The EC2 instances are in an auto-scaling group. The application uses an Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL database that is deployed in a single availability zone. The company wants the application to be highly available with minimum downtime and minimum loss of data. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational effort? Option A. Place the EC2 instances in different AWS regions. Use Amazon Route 53 health checks to redirect traffic. Use Aurora PostgreSQL cross-region replication. Option B. Configure the auto-scaling group to use multiple availability zones. Configure the database as multi-AZ. Configure on Amazon RDS proxy instance for the database. Option C. Configure the auto-scaling group to use one availability zone. Generate early snapshots of the database. Recover the database from the snapshots in the event of a failure. And option D. Configure the auto-scaling group to use multiple AWS regions. Write the data from the application to Amazon S3. Use S3 event notifications to launch an AWS Lambda function to write the data to the database. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is: a company's HTTP application is behind a network load balancer. The NLB's target group is configured to use an Amazon EC2 auto-scaling group with multiple EC2 instances that run the web service. The company notices that the NLB is not detecting HTTP errors for the application. These errors require a manual restart of the EC2 instances that run the web service. The company needs to improve the application's availability without writing custom scripts or code. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A. Enable HTTP health checks on the NLB, supplying the URL of the company's application. Option B. Add a cron job to the EC2 instances to check the local application's logs once each minute. If HTTP errors are detected, the application will restart. Option C. Replace the NLB with an application load balancer. Enable HTTP health checks by supplying the URL of the company's application. Configure an auto-scaling action to replace unhealthy instances. And option D. Create an Amazon CloudWatch alarm that monitors the unhealthy host count metric for the NLB. Configure an auto-scaling action to replace unhealthy instances when the alarm is in the alarm state. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is: a company runs a shopping application that uses Amazon DynamoDB to to store customer information. In case of data corruption, a solutions architect needs to design a solution that meets a recovery point objective of 15 minutes and a recovery time objective of 1 hour. What should be the solutions architect recommend to meet these requirements? Option A. Configure DynamoDB global tables for RPO recovery. Point the application to a different AWS region. Option B. Configure DynamoDB points in time recovery. For RPO recovery, restore to the desired point in time. Option C. Export the DynamoDB data to Amazon S3 Glacier on a daily basis. For RPO recovery, import the data from S3 Glacier to DynamoDB. And option D. Schedule Amazon Elastic Bookstore snapshots for the DynamoDB table every 15 minutes for RPO recovery. Restore the DynamoDB table by using the EBS snapshot. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company runs a photo processing application that needs to frequently upload and download pictures from Amazon S3 buckets that are located in the same AWS region. A solutions architect has noticed an increased cost in data transfer fees and needs to implement a solution to reduce these costs. How can the solutions architect meet this requirement? Option A. Deploy Amazon API gateway into a public subnet and adjust the route table to route S3 calls through it. Option B. Deploy a NAT gateway into a public subnet and attach an endpoint policy that allows access to the S3 buckets. Option C. Deploy the application into a public subnet and allow it to route through an internet gateway to access the S3 buckets. And option D. Deploy an S3 VPC gateway endpoint into the VPC and attach an endpoint policy that allows access to the S3 buckets. And the correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company recently launched Linux-based application instances on Amazon EC2 in a private subnet and launched a Linux-based Bastion host on an Amazon EC2 instance in a public subnet of a VPC. A solutions architect needs to connect from the on-premises network through the company's internet connection to the Bastion host and to the application servers. The solutions architect must make sure that the security groups of all the EC2 instances will allow the access. Which combination of steps should the solutions architect take to meet these requirements? Choose 2. Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option C and D. Moving to next question. A solutions architect is designing a two-tier web application. The application consists of a web public-facing web tier hosted on Amazon EC2 in public subnets. The database tier consists of Microsoft SQL Server running on Amazon EC2 in a private subnet. Security is a high priority for the company. How should security groups be configured in this situation? Choose 2. Option A. Configure the security group for the web tier to allow inbound traffic on port 443 from 0.0.0.0/0. Option B. Configure the security group for the web tier to allow outbound traffic on port 443 from 0.0.0/0. Option C. Configure the security group for the database tier to allow inbound traffic on port 1433 from the security group for the web tier. Option D. Configure the security group for the database tier to allow outbound traffic on ports 443 and 1433 to the security group for the web tier. And option E, configure the security group for the database tier to allow inbound traffic on ports 443 and 1433 from the security group for the web tier. And the correct answer is option A and C. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company wants to move a multi-tiered application from on-premises to the AWS cloud to improve the application's performance. The application consists of application tiers that communicate with each other by way of RESTful services. Transactions are dropped when one tier becomes overloaded. A solutions architect must design a solution that resolves these issues and modernizes the application. Which solution meets these requirements and is the most operationally efficient? Option A, use Amazon API Gateway and direct transactions to the AWS Lambda functions as the application layer. Use Amazon Simple Queue Service as the communication layer between application services. Option B, use Amazon CloudWatch matrices to analyze the application performance history to determine the server's peak utilization during the performance failures. Increase the size of the application servers Amazon EC2 instances to meet the peak requirements. Option C, use Amazon Simple Notification Service to handle the messaging between application servers running an Amazon EC2 in an auto-scaling group. Use Amazon CloudWatch to monitor the SNS queue length and scale up and down as required. And option D, use Amazon Simple Queue Service to handle the messaging between application servers running on Amazon EC2 in an auto-scaling group. Use Amazon CloudWatch to monitor the SQS queue length and scale up when communication failures are detected. And the correct answer is option A. Now moving to next question. A company receives 10 TB of instrumentation data each day from several machines located at a single factory. The data consists of JSON files stored on a storage area network in an on-premises data center located within the factory. The company wants to send this data to Amazon S3 where it can be accessed by several additional systems that provide critical near real-time analytics. A secure transfer is important because the data is considered sensitive. Which solution offers the most reliable data transfer? Option A, AWS Data Sync over public internet. Option B, AWS Data Sync over AWS Direct Connect. Option C, AWS Database Migration Service over public internet. And option D, AWS Database Migration Service over AWS Direct Connect. And the correct answer is option B. Moving to next question. A company needs to configure a real-time data ingestion architecture for its application. The company needs an API, a process that transforms data as the data is streamed, and a storage solution from the data. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is: a company needs to keep user transaction data in an Amazon DynamoDB table. The company must retain the data for 7 years. What is the most operationally efficient solution that meets these requirements? Option A. Use DynamoDB point-in-time recovery to back up the table continuously. Option B. Use AWS Backup to create backup schedules and retention policies for the table. Option C. Create an on-demand backup of the table by using the DynamoDB console. Store the backup in an Amazon S3 bucket. Set an S3 lifecycle configuration for the S3 bucket. And option D. Create an Amazon Event Bridge rule to invoke an AWS Lambda function. Configure the Lambda function to back up the table and to store the backup in an Amazon S3 bucket. Set an S3 lifecycle configuration for the S3 bucket. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company is planning to use an Amazon DynamoDB table for data storage. The company is concerned about cost optimization. The table will not be used on most mornings. In the evenings, the read and write traffic will often be unpredictable. When traffic spikes occur, they will happen very quickly. What should a solution architect recommend? Option A. Create a DynamoDB table in on-demand capacity mode. Option B. Create a DynamoDB table with a global secondary index. Option C. Create a DynamoDB table with provisioned capacity and auto-scaling. And option D. Create a DynamoDB table in provisioned capacity mode and configure it as a global table. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company recently signed a contract with an AWS managed service provider partner for help with an application migration initiative. A solutions architect needs to share an Amazon machine image from an existing AWS account with the MSP partner's AWS account. The AMI is backed by Amazon Elastic Block Store and use an AWS key management service customer managed key to encrypt EBS volume snapshots. What is the most secure way for the solutions architect to share the AMI with the MSP partner's AWS account? Option A. Make the encrypted AMI and snapshots publicly available. Modify the key policy to allow the MSP partner's AWS account to use the key. Option B. Modify the launch permission property of the AMI. Share the AMI with the MSP partner's AWS account only. Modify the key policy to allow the MSP partner's AWS account to use the key. Option C. Modify the launch permission property of the AMI. Share the AMI with the MSP partner's AWS account only. Modify the key policy to trust a new KMS key that is owned by the MSP partner for encryption. And option D. Export the AMI from the source account to an Amazon S3 bucket in the MSP partner's AWS account. Encrypt the S3 bucket with a new KMS key that is owned by the MSP partner. Copy and launch the AMI in the MSP partner's AWS account. And the correct answer is option B. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a company wants to reduce the cost of its existing three-tier web architecture. The web application and database servers are running on Amazon EC2 instances for the development, test, and production environments. The EC2 instances average 30% CPU utilization during peak hours and 10% CPU utilization during non-peak hours. The producing EC2 instances run 24 hours a day. The development and test EC2 instances run for at least 8 hours each day. The company plans to implement automation to stop the development and test EC2 instances. When they are not in use, which EC2 instances purchasing solution will meet the company's requirements most cost effectively? Option A. Use spot instances for the production EC2 instances. Use reserve instances for the development and test EC2 instances. Option B. Use reserve instances for the production EC2 instances. Use on-demand instances for the development and test EC2 instances. Option C. Use spot blocks for the production EC2 instances. Use reserve instances for the development and test instances. And option D. Use on-demand instances for the production EC2. Use spot blocks for the development and test EC2 instances. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company has a production web application in which users upload documents through a web interface or a mobile app. According to a new regulatory requirement, new documents cannot be modified or deleted after they are stored. What should a solutions architect do to meet this requirement? Option A. Store the uploaded documents in an Amazon S3 bucket with S3 versioning and S3 object look enabled. Option B. Store the uploaded documents in an Amazon S3 bucket. Configure an S3 lifecycle policy to archive the documents periodically. Option C. Store the uploaded documents in an Amazon S3 bucket with S3 versioning enabled. Configure an ACL to restrict all access to read-only. And option D. Store the uploaded documents on an Amazon Elastic file system. Volume. Access the data by mounting the volume in read-only mode. And the correct answer is option A. Now moving to next question. A company has several web servers that need to frequently access a common Amazon RDS MySQL multi-AZ DB instances. The company wants to secure method for the web servers to connect to the database while meeting a security requirement to rotate user credentials frequently. Which solution meets these requirements? Option A. Store database user credentials in AWS Secrets Manager. Grant the necessary IAM permissions to allow the web servers to access AWS Secrets Manager. Option B. Store database user credentials in AWS System Manager Ops Center. Grant the necessary IAM permissions to allow the web servers to access Ops Center. Option C. Store the database user credentials in a secure Amazon S3 bucket. Grant the necessary IAM permissions to allow the web servers to retrieve credentials and access the database. And option D. Store the database user credentials in files encrypted with AWS Key Management Service on the web server file system. The web server should be able to decrypt the files and access the database. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company hosts an application on AWS Lambda functions that are invoked by an Amazon API gateway API. The Lambda function saves customer data to an Amazon Aurora MySQL database. Whenever the company upgrades the database, the Lambda function fails to establish database connections until the upgrade is complete. The result is that customer data is not recorded for some of the event. A solutions architect needs to design a solution that stores customer data that is created during database upgrades. Which solutions will meet these requirements? Option A. Provision an Amazon RDS proxy to sit between the Lambda functions and the database. Option C. Persist the customer data to Lambda local storage. Configure new Lambda functions to scan the local storage to save the customer data to the database. And option D. Store the customer data in an Amazon Simple Queue service. FIFOQ. Create a new Lambda function that pulls the queue and stores the customer data in the database. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a survey company has gathered data for several years from areas in the United States. The company hosts the data in an Amazon S3 bucket that is 3 TB in size and growing. The company has started to share the data with a European marketing firm that has S3 buckets. The company wants to ensure that its data transfer costs remain as low as possible. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A. Configure the requester pays feature on the company's S3 bucket. Option B. Configure S3 cross-region replication from the company's S3 bucket to one of the marketing firm's S3 buckets. Option C. Configure cross-account access for the marketing firm so that the marketing firm has access to the company's S3 bucket. And option D. Configure company's S3 bucket to use S3 intelligent tiering. Sync the S3 bucket to one of the marketing firm's S3 buckets. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company uses Amazon S3 to store its confidential audit documents. The S3 bucket uses bucket policies to restrict access to audit team IAM user credentials according to the principle of least privilege. Company managers are worried about accidental deletion of documents in the S3 bucket and want a more secure solution. What should a solutions architect do to secure the audit documents? Option A. Enable the versioning and MFA delete features on the S3 bucket. Option B. Enable multi-factor authentication on the IAM user credentials for each audit team IAM user account. Option C. Add an S3 lifecycle policy to the audit team's IAM user accounts to deny the S3 delete object action during audit dates. And option D. Use AWS key management service to encrypt the S3 bucket and restrict audit team IAM user accounts from accessing the KMS key. And the correct answer is option A. Now moving to next question. A company is using a SQL database to store movie data that is publicly accessible. The database runs on an Amazon RDS single AZDB instance. A script runs queries at random intervals each day to record the number of new movies that have been added to the database. The script must report a final total during business hours. The company's development team notices that the database performance is inadequate for development tasks when the script is running. A solutions architect must recommend a solution to resolve this issue. Which solution will meet these requirements and with the least operational overhead? Option A. Modify the DB instance to be a multi-AZ deployment. Option B. Create a read replica of the database. Configure the script to query only the read replica. Option C. Instruct the development team to manually export the entries in the database at the end of each day. And option D. Use Amazon Elasticsearch to catch the common queries that the script runs against the database. And the correct answer is option B. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company has applications that run on Amazon EC2 instances in a VPC. One of the application needs to call the Amazon S3 API to store and read objects. According to the company's security regulations, no traffic from the applications is allowed to travel across the internet. Which solution will meet these requirements? Option A. Configure an S3 gateway endpoint. Option B. Create an S3 bucket in a private subnet. Option C. Create an S3 bucket in the same AWS region as the EC2 instances. And option D. Configure a NAT gateway in the same subnet as the EC2 instances. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is: a company is storing sensitive user information in an Amazon S3 bucket. The company wants to provide secure access to this bucket from the application tier running on Amazon EC2 instances inside a VPC. Which combination of steps should a solutions architect take to accomplish this? Choose 2. Option A. Configure a VPC gateway endpoint for Amazon S3 within the VPC. Option B. Create a bucket policy to make the objects in the S3 bucket public. Option C. Create a bucket policy that limits access to only the application tier running in the VPC. And option D. Create an IAM user with an S3 access policy and copy the IAM credentials to the EC2 instance. And option D. Create a NAT instances and have the EC2 instances uses the NAT instance to access the S3 bucket. And the correct answer is option A and C. Next question is: a company runs an on-premises application that is powered by a MySQL database. The company is migrating the application to AWS to increase the application's elasticity and availability. The current architecture shows heavy and read activity on the database during times of normal operation. Every 4 hours, the company's development team pulls a full export of the production database to populate a database in the staging environment. During this period, users experience unacceptable application latency. The development team is unable to use the staging environment until the procedure completes. A solutions architecture must recommend replacement architecture that alleviates the application latency issue. The replacement architecture also must give the development team the ability to continue using the staging environment without delay. Which solution meets these requirements? Options are: option A. Use Amazon Aurora MySQL with multi-AZ Aurora replicas for production. Populate the staging database by implementing a backup and restore process that uses the MySQL dump utility. Option B. Use Amazon Aurora MySQL with multi-AZ Aurora replicas for production. Use database cloning to create the staging database on demand. Option C. Use Amazon RDS for SQL with a multi-AZ deployment and read replicas for production. Use the standby instances for the staging database. And option D. Use Amazon RDS for MySQL with a multi-AZ deployment and read replicas for production. Populate the staging database by implementing a backup and restore process that uses the MySQL dump utility. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company is designing an application where users upload small files into Amazon S3. After a user uploads a file, the file requires one-time simple processing to transform the data and save the data in JSON format for later analysis. Each file must be processed as quickly as possible after it is uploaded. Demand will vary. On some days, users will upload a high number of files. On other days, users will upload a few files or no files. Which solution meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Configure Amazon EMR to read text files from Amazon S3. Run processing scripts to transform the data. Store the resulting JSON file in an Amazon Aurora DB cluster. Option B. Configure Amazon S3 to send an event notification to an Amazon Simple Queue service queue. Use Amazon EC2 instances to read from the queue and process the data. Store the resulting JSON file in Amazon DynamoDB. Option C. Configure Amazon S3 to send an event notification to an Amazon Simple Queue service queue. Use an AWS Lambda function to read from the queue and process the data. Store the resulting JSON file in Amazon DynamoDB. And option D. Configure Amazon Event Bridge to send an event to Amazon Nessus data streams when a new file is uploaded. Use an AWS Lambda function to consume the event from the stream and process the data. Store the resulting JSON file in an Amazon Aurora DB cluster. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is, an application allows users at a company's headquarters to access product data. The product data is stored in an Amazon RDS MySQL DB instance. The operations team has isolated an application performance slowdown and wants to separate read traffic from write traffic. A solutions architect needs to optimize the application's performance quickly. What should the solutions architect recommend? Option A. Change the existing database to a multi-AZ deployment. Serve the read request from the primary availability zone. Option B. Change the existing database to a multi-AZ deployment. Serve the read request from the secondary availability zone. Option C. Create read replicas for the database. Configure the read replicas with half of the compute and storage resources as the source database. And option D. Create read replicas for the database. Configure the read replicas with the same compute and storage resources as the source database. And the correct answer is option D. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, an Amazon EC2 administrator created the following policy associated with an IAM group containing several users. Please go through the script. What is the effect of this policy? Option A. Users can terminate an EC2 instance in any AWS region except as East 1. Option B. Users can terminate an EC2 instance with the IP address 10.100.100.1 in the US East 1 region. Option C. Users can terminate an EC2 instances in the US East 1 region when the user source IP is 10.100.100.254. And option D. Users cannot terminate an EC2 instances in the US East 1 region when the user source IP is 10.100.100.254. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company has a large Microsoft SharePoint deployment running on premises that requires Microsoft Windows shared file storage. The company wants to migrate this workload to the AWS cloud and is considering various storage options. The storage solution must be highly available and integrated with Active Directory for access control. Which solution will satisfy these requirements? Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option D. Now moving to next question. An image processing company has a web application that users use to upload images. The application uploads the image into an Amazon S3 bucket. The company has set up S3 event notifications to publish the object creation events to an Amazon Simple Queue service, standard queue. The SQS queue serves as the event source for an AWS Lambda function that processes the image and sends the results to users through email. Users report that they are receiving multiple email messages for every upload image. A solutions architect determines that SQS messages are invoking the Lambda function more than once, resulting in multiple email messages. What should the solutions architect do to resolve this issue with the least operational overhead? And the options are: option A, set up long polling in the SQS queue by increasing the received message wait time to 30 seconds. Option B, change the SQS standard queue to an SQS FIFO queue. Use the message deduplication ID to discard duplicate messages. Option C, increase the visibility timeout in the SQS queue to a value that is greater than the total of the function timeout and the batch window timeout. And option D, modify the Lambda function to delete each message from the SQS queue immediately after the message is read before processing. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company is implementing a shared storage solution for a gaming application that is hosted in an on-premises data center. The company needs the ability to use Lustre clients to access data. The solution must be fully managed. Which solution meets these requirements? Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option D. Next question is, a company's containerized application runs on an Amazon EC2 instance. The application needs to download security certificates before it can communicate with other business applications. The company wants a highly secure solution to encrypt and decrypt the certificates in near real time. The solution also needs to store data in highly available storage after the data is encrypted. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Create AWS Secrets Manager secrets for encrypted certificates. Manually update the certificates as needed. Control access to the data by using fine-grained IAM access. Option B. Create an AWS Lambda function that uses the Python cryptography library to receive and perform encryption operations. Store the function in an Amazon S3 bucket. Option C. Create an AWS Key Management Service customer managed key. Allow the ECT role to use the KMS key for encryption operations. Store the encrypted data on Amazon S3. And option D, create an AWS Key Management Service customer managed key. Allow the ECT role to use the KMS key for encryption operations. Store the encrypted data on Amazon Elastic Book Store volumes. And the correct answer is option C. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a solutions architect is designing a VPC with public and private subnets. The VPC and subnets use IPv4 CIDR blocks. There is one public subnet and one private subnet in each of three availability zones. For high availability, an internet gateway is used to provide internet access for the public subnets. The private subnets require access to the internet to allow Amazon EC2 instances to download software updates. What should the solutions architect do to enable internet access for the private subnets? Option A. Create three NAT gateways, one for each public subnet in each AZ. Create a private route table for each AZ that forwards non-VPC traffic to the NAT gateway in its AZ. Option B. Create three NAT instances, one for each private subnet in each AZ. Create a private route table for each AZ that forwards non-VPC traffic to the NAT instance in its AZ. Option C. Create a second internet gateway on one of the private subnets. Update the route table for the private subnets that forward non-VPC traffic to the private internet gateway. And option D. Create an egress-only internet gateway on one of the public subnets. Update the route table for the private subnets that forward non-VPC traffic to the egress-only internet gateway. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company wants to migrate an on-premises data center to AWS. The data center hosts as SFTP server that stores its data on an NFS-based file system. The server holds 200 GB of data that needs to be transferred. The server must be hosted on an Amazon EC2 instance that uses an Amazon Elastic file system. Which combination of steps should a solutions architect take to automate these tasks? Choose 2. Option A. Launch the EC2 instances into the same availability zone as the EFS file system. Option B. Install an AWS data sync agent in on-premises data center. Option C. Create a secondary Amazon Elastic Book Store volume on the EC2 instance for the data. Option D. Manually use an operating system copy command to push the data to the EC2 instance. And option E. Use AWS data sync to create a suitable location configuration for the on-premises SFTP server. And the correct answer is option A and B. Next question is, a company has an AWS glue extract transform and load job that runs every day at the same time. The job processes XML data that is in an Amazon S3 bucket. New data is added to the S3 bucket every day. A solutions architect notices that AWS Glue is processing all the data during each run. What should the solutions architect do to prevent AWS Glue from reprocessing old data? Option A. Edit the job to use job bookmarks. Option B. Edit the job to delete data after the data is processed. Option C. Edit the job by setting the number of workers field to 1. And option D. Use a find matches machine learning transform. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a solutions architect must design a highly available infrastructure for a website. The website is powered by Windows web servers that run on Amazon EC2 instances. The solutions architect must implement a solution that can mitigate a large-scale DDoS attack that originates from thousands of IP addresses. Downtime is not acceptable for the website. Which actions should the solutions architect take to protect the website from such an attack? Choose 2. Option A. Use AWS Shield Advanced to stop the DDoS attack. Option B. Configure Amazon Guard Duty to automatically block the attackers. Option C. Configure the website to use Amazon CloudFront for both static and dynamic consent. Option D. Use an AWS Lambda function to automatically add attacker IP addresses to VPC network ACLs. And option E. Use EC2 spot instances in an auto-scaling group with a target tracking scaling policy that is set to 80% CPU utilization. And the correct answer is option A and C. Next question is, a company is preparing to deploy a new serverless workload. A solutions architect must use the principle of least privilege to configure permissions that will be used to run an AWS Lambda function. An Amazon Event Bridge rule will invoke the function. Which solution meet these requirements? Option A. Add an execution role to the function with Lambda invoke function as the action and as the principal. Option B. Add an execution role to the function with Lambda invoker function as the action and service Lambda Amazonos.com as the principal. Option C. Add a resource-based policies to the function with Lambda as the action and service events Amazonos.com as the principal. And option D. Add a resource-based policy to the function with Lambda invoke function as the action and service events Amazonos.com as the principal. And the correct answer is option D. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a company is preparing to store confidential data in Amazon S3. For compliance reasons, the data must be encrypted at rest. Encryption key usage must be locked for auditing purposes. keys must be rotated every year. Which solution meets these requirements and is the most operationally efficient? Option A, server-side encryption with customer-provided keys. Option B, server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed keys. Option C, server-side encryption with AWS KMS keys with manual rotation. And option D, server-side encryption with AWS KMS keys with automatic rotation. And the correct answer is option D. Now moving to next question. A bicycle sharing company is developing a multi-tier architecture to track the location of its bicycle during peak operating hours. The company wants to use these data points in its existing analytics platform. A solutions architect must determine the most viable multi-tier option to support this architecture. The data points must be accessible from the REST API. Which action meets these requirements for storing and retrieving location data? Option A, use Amazon Athena with Amazon S3. Option B, use Amazon API Gateway with AWS Lambda. Option C, use Amazon QuickSight with Amazon Redshift. And option D, use Amazon API Gateway with Amazon Nessus Data Analytics. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company has an automobile sales website that stores its listings in a database on Amazon RDS. When an automobile is sold, the listing needs to be removed from the website and the data must be sent to multiple target systems. Which designs should a solutions architect recommend? Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option A. Moving to next question. A company needs to store data in Amazon S3 and must prevent the data from being changed. The company wants new objects that are uploaded to Amazon S3 to remain unchangeable for a non-specific amount of time until the company decides to modify the objects. Only specific users in the company's AWS account can have the ability to delete the objects. What should a solutions architect do to meet these requirements? Option A, create an S3 Glacier vault, apply a write once, read many vault lock policy to the objects. Option B, create an S3 bucket with S3 object lock enabled, enable versioning, set a retention period of 100 years. Use governance mode as the S3 bucket's default retention mode for new objects. Option C, create an S3 bucket, use AWS CloudTrail to track any S3 API events that modify the objects. Upon notification, restore the modified objects from any backup versions that the company has. And option D, create an S3 bucket with S3 object lock enabled, enable versioning, add a legal hold to the objects, add the S3 put object legal hold permissions to the IAM policies of users who need to delete the objects. And the correct answer is option D. Next question is, a social media company allows users to upload emails to its website. The website runs on an Amazon EC2 instances. During upload request, the website resizes the image to a standard size and store the resized image in Amazon S3. Users are experiencing slow upload requests to the website. The company needs to reduce coupling within the application and improve website performance. A solutions architect must design the most operationally efficient process for image uploads. Which combination of actions should the solutions architect take to meet these requirements? Choose 2. Option A. Configure the application to upload image to S3 Glacier. Option B. Configure the web server to upload the original image to Amazon S3. Option C. Configure the application to upload image directly from each user's browser to Amazon S3 through the use of a pre-signed URL. Option D. Configure S3 event notifications to invoke an AWS Lambda function when an image is uploaded. Use the function to resize the image. And option E. Create an Amazon event bridge rule that invokes an AWS Lambda function on a schedule to resize upload image. And the correct answer is option C and D. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company recently migrated a message processing system to AWS. The system receives messages into an active MQ queue running on an Amazon EC2 instance. Messages are processed by a consumer application running on Amazon EC2. The consumer application processes the message and writes results to a MySQL database running on Amazon EC2. The company wants this application to be highly available with low operational complexity. Which architecture offers the highest availability? Option A. Add a second active MQ server to another availability zone. Add an additional consumer EC2 instance to another availability zone. Replicate the MySQL database to another availability zone. Option B. Use Amazon MQ with active standby brokers configured across two availability zones. Add an additional consumer EC2 instances in another availability zone. Replicate the MySQL database to another availability zone. Option C. Use Amazon MQ with active standby brokers configured across two availability zones. Add an additional consumer EC2 instances in another availability zone. Use Amazon RDS for MySQL with multi-AZ enabled. And option D. Use Amazon MQ with active standby broker configured across two availability zones. Add an auto-scaling group for the consumer EC2 instances across two availability zones. Use Amazon RDS for MySQL with multi-AZ enabled. And the correct answer is option D. Next question is: a company hosts a containerized web application on a fleet of on-premises servers that process incoming requests. The number of requests is growing quickly. The on-premises servers cannot handle the increased number of requests. The company wants to move the application to AWS with minimum code changes and minimum development effort. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Use AWS Fargate on Amazon Elastic Container Service to run the containerized web application with service auto scaling. Use an application load balancer to distribute the incoming requests. Option B. Use two Amazon EC2 instances to host the containerized web application. Use an application load balancer to distribute the incoming request. Option C. Use AWS Lambda with a new code that uses one of the supported languages. Create multiple Lambda functions to support the load. Use Amazon API Gateway as an entry point to the Lambda functions. And option D. Use a higher performance computing solution such as AWS Parallel Cluster to establish an HPC cluster that can process the incoming request at the appropriate scale. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is, a company uses 50 TB of data for reporting. The company wants to move this data from on-premises to AWS. A custom application in the company's data center runs a weekly data transformation job. The company plans to pause the application until the data transfer is complete and needs to begin the transfer process as soon as possible. The data center does not have any available network bandwidth for additional workloads. A solutions architect must transfer the data and must configure the transformation job to continue to run in the AWS cloud. Which solution will meet these requirements with the least operational overhead? Option A. Use AWS Data Sync to move the data. Create a custom transformation job by using AWS Glue. Option B. Order an AWS no-code device to move the data. Deploy the transformation application to the device. Option C. Order an AWS Snowball as storage optimized device. Copy the data to the device. Create a custom transformation job by using AWS Glue. And option D. Order an AWS Snowball as storage optimized device that includes Amazon EC2 compute. Copy the data on the service. Create a new EC2 instance on AWS to run the transformation application. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company has created an image analysis application in which users can upload photos and add photos frames to their image. The users upload images and metadata to indicate which photo frames they want to add to their image. The application uses a single Amazon EC2 instance and Amazon DynamoDB to store the metadata. The application is becoming more popular and the number of users is increasing. The company expects the number of concurrent users to vary significantly depending on the time of day and day of week. The company must ensure that the application can scale to meet the needs of the growing user base, which app solutions meets these requirements. Option A. Use AWS Lambda to process the photos, store the photos and metadata in DynamoDB. Sorry. Option B. Use Amazon Kinesis Data Fire host to process the photos and to store the photos and metadata. Option C. Use AWS Lambda to process the photos, store the photos in Amazon S3, retain DynamoDB to store. And option D. Increase the number of EC2 instances to 3. Use provisions IOPS, SSD, Amazon Elastic Block Store volumes to store the photos and metadata. And the correct answer is option C. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is, a solutions architect is designing the cloud architecture for a new application being deployed on AWS. The process should run in parallel while adding and removing application nodes as needed based on the number of jobs to be processed. The processor application is stateless. The solutions architect must ensure that the application is loosely coupled and the job items are durably stored. Which design should the solutions architect use? Option A. Create an Amazon SNS topic to send the jobs that need to be processed. Create an Amazon machine image that consists of the processor application. Create a launch configuration that uses the AMI. Create an auto-scaling group using the launch configuration. Set the scaling policy for the auto-scaling group to add and remove nodes based on CPU usage. Option B. Create a Amazon SQS queue to hold the jobs that need to be processed. Create an Amazon machine image that consists of the processor application. Create a launch configuration that uses the AMI. Create an auto-scaling group using the launch configuration. Set the scaling policy for the auto-scaling group to add and remove nodes based on network usage. Option C. Create an Amazon SQS queue to hold the jobs that need to be processed. Create an Amazon machine image that consists of the processor application. Create a launch template that uses the AMI. Create an auto-scaling group using the launch template. Set the scaling policy for the auto-scaling group to add and remove nodes based on the number of items in the SQS queue. And option D, create an Amazon SNS topic to send the jobs that need to be processed. Create an Amazon machine image that consists of the processor application. Create a launch template that uses the AMI. Create an auto-scaling group using the launch template. Set the scaling policy for the auto-scaling group to add and remove nodes based on the number of messages published to the SNS topic. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is, a company hosts its web applications in the AWS cloud. The company configures elastic load balancers to use certificates that are imported into AWS Certificate Manager. The company's security team must be notified 30 days before the expiration of each certificate. What should a solutions architect recommend to meet this requirement? Option A. Add a rule in ACM to publish a custom message to an Amazon simple notification service topic every day beginning 30 days before any certificate will expire. Option B. Create an AWS config rule that checks for certificates that will expire within 30 days. Configure Amazon Event Bridge CloudWatch to invoke a custom alert by way of Amazon simple notification service when AWS config reports a non-compliant resource. And option C, use AWS Trusted Advisor to check for certificates that will expire within 30 days. Create an Amazon CloudWatch alarm that is based on Trusted Advisor metrics for check status changes. Configure the alarm to send a custom alert by way of Amazon Simple Notification Service. And option D, create an Amazon Event Bridge rule to detect any certificates that will expire within 30 days. Configure the rule to invoke an AWS Lambda function. Configure the Lambda function to send a custom alert by way of Amazon Simple Notification Service. And the correct answer is option B. Next question is, a company's dynamic website is hosted using on-premises servers in the United States. The company is launching its product in Europe and it wants to optimize site loading times for new European users. The site's backend must remain in the United States. The product is being launched in a few days and an immediate solution is needed. What should the solutions architect recommend? Option A, launch an Amazon EC2 instance in EAST1 and migrate the site to it. Option B, move the website to Amazon S3, use cross-region replication between regions. Option C, use Amazon CloudFront with a custom origin pointing to the on-premises servers. And option D, use an Amazon Route 53 geoproximity routing policy pointing to on-premises servers. And the correct answer is option C. Thank you. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are covering question and answer on AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. To find the complete list of questions and answers, please go to the playlist link provided in the description. Our team is working hard to keep the content up to date. If you find this video helpful, please let us know in the comment. We really appreciate if you like and subscribe to our channel. Today's question is: a company wants to use high performance computing infrastructure and AWS for financial risk modeling. The company's HPC workloads run on Linux. Each HPC workflow runs on hundreds of Amazon EC2 Spot instances, is short-lived, and generates thousands of output files that are ultimately stored in persistent storage for analytics and long-term future use. The company seeks a cloud storage solution that permits the copying of on-premises data to long-term persistent storage to make data available for processing by all EC2 instances. The solution should also be a high-performance file system that is integrated with persistent storage to read and write datasets and output files. Which combination of AWS services meets these requirements? Option A, Amazon FSx for Lustre integrated with Amazon S3. Option B, Amazon FSx for Windows File Server integrated with Amazon S3. Option C, Amazon S3 Glacier integrated with Amazon Elastic Bookstore. And option D, Amazon S3 Bucket with a VPC endpoint integrated with an Amazon Elastic Bookstore general purpose SSD volume. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is: a company is building a containerized application on premises and decides to move the application to AWS. The application will have thousands of users soon after it is deployed. The company is unsure how to manage the deployment of containers at scale. The company needs to deploy the containerized application in a highly available architecture that minimizes operational overhead. Which solution will meet these requirements? Please go through the options. And the correct answer is option A. Next question is: a company has two applications, a sender application that sends messages with payloads to be processed and a processing application intended to receive the message with payloads. The company wants to implement an AWS service to handle messages between the two applications. The sender application can send about 1,000 messages each hour. The message may take up to 2 days to be processed. If the messages fail to process, they must be retained so that they do not impact the processing of any remaining messages. Which solution meets these requirements and is the most operationally efficient? Option A, set up an Amazon EC2 instance running a Redis database. Configure both applications to use the instance, store, process, and delete the message respectively. Option B, use an Amazon Kinesis data stream to receive the message from the sender application. Integrate the processing application with the Kinesis client library. Option C, integrate the sender and processor applications with an Amazon Simple Queue service queue. Configure a dead letter queue to collect the message that failed to process. And option D, subscribe the processing application to an Amazon Simple Notification Service topic to receive notification to process. Integrate the sender application to write to the SNS topic. And the correct answer is option C. Next question is: a solutions architect must design a solution that uses Amazon CloudFront with an Amazon S3 origin to store a static website. The company's security policy requires that all website traffic be inspected by AWS WAF. How should the solutions architect comply with these requirements? Option A, configure an S3 bucket policy to accept requests coming from the AWS WAF Amazon resource name only. Option B, configure Amazon CloudFront to forward all incoming requests to AWS WAF before requesting content from the S3 origin. Option C. Configure a security group that allow Amazon CloudFront IP addresses to access Amazon S3 only. Associate AWS WAF to CloudFront. And option D. Configure Amazon CloudFront and Amazon S3 to use an origin access identity. To restrict access to the S3 bucket, enable AWS WAF on the distribution. And the correct answer is option D. Next question is, organizers for a global event want to put daily reports online as static HTML pages. The pages are expected to generate millions of views from users around the world. The files are stored in an Amazon S3 bucket. A solutions architect has been asked to design an efficient and effective solution. Which actions should the solutions architect take to accomplish this? Option A. Generate pre-signed URLs for the files. Option B. Use cross-region replication to all regions. Option C. Use the geo-proximity feature of Amazon Route 53. And option D. Use Amazon CloudFront with the S3 bucket as its origin. And the correct answer is option D. Thank you.